Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
What is going on, guys? It's Matty Ice here with Maniac, and this is the Kane Column Pod. And let me tell you, I am really excited because we have an interview with Wyatt Kopelman, writer for State of the U. He's a current student. He's a broadcaster for their news site too. I'm really excited to get into it, so let's just do it.
Let's jump right in.
What is up, guys? We're joined here by Wyatt Kopelman, writer for State of the U and TMH Sports. He's also a current student and broadcaster for the student radio station. Wyatt, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Awesome, man. I'm ready to talk some hoops. It's been a while. We were kind of robbed out of the tourney last year, so it's good to get into it.
It certainly is. And I thought we were robbed out of the tourney the year before, despite battling with 7 players. And I think we can make a storm, no pun intended, in the ACC this year.
Awesome. So just getting into, we just talked about like last year and the year before, Miami has struggled, to say the least. They're 29-34 overall, and then 12-26 in the ACC. What do you think has contributed to that?
Well, it was certainly the mounting amount of injuries that the Canes have experienced over the past couple of years. Injuries to Chris Lykes, Cameron McGusty last year, I think hampered us a bit. There were a lot of games where I thought we had a chance at beating a team like a Louisville or a North Carolina, and we just weren't able to have enough guys. I think also ineligibility has plagued the team a little bit. We sorely missed Juan Hernandez's presence and impact a couple of years ago, as he could have been a real cornerstone of a contributor to the potentially going to the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, that just wasn't able to happen. And instead of playing with 8 guys or even 9 guys, had Dane Gack not got hurt, we could have saw a better outcome, of course. And there were games like the North Carolina game a couple of years ago in Chapel Hill where we had the Tar Heels on the ropes, and similar to other games, there were a lot of meaningful losses to our record and chances at the ACC tournament and the NCAA tournament as well. So definitely injuries and ineligibility.
Yeah. Also, just kind of circling back, so injuries and lack of depth are definitely 2 of the major components. I would say that, Miami has really struggled the past 2 years, especially last year, in regards to defense. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, the Canes have been one of the worst defensive teams in the league. And this was something Coach Larinaga had cited in Media Day a couple of weeks ago on October 30th. I think missing a player like Sam Wardenberg this year will hamper our improved or potentially improved defense this year. But at the same time, we do have depth. We have some young athleticism on the team that's been working hard at learning the ropes in Coach L's program that he's established in 10 seasons here at the U. And I think a lot of guys are committed towards being on the same page defensively. And like I said, just climbing out of the cellar and impressing a lot of teams, because a lot of players, as Coach L had cited, are tuned in offensively, but it's really who's going to bring it defensively, especially with Wardenberg being out. It's down to Dane Gack, Anthony Walker, and the other forwards we have that are going to have to just work hard to stop the Blue Bloods in Duke and North Carolina that can score in major surges.
Yeah, most definitely. And, you talk about Wardenberg being out for the year. It's a huge loss when you consider he was probably one of the better defenders on the team. He led the team in blocks. Do you think that Nysier Brooks can kind of step in and fill the role that, Wardenberg left?
Absolutely. I think the thing about Nysier Brooks being here this year is that he'll be that glue guy to sort of chain everyone together on the defensive end specifically. I'm not sure how much of an offensive contributor he'll be, but he definitely brings the character that you need in a defensive-minded big like Brooks, who has that gritty attitude being from Philadelphia. And he comes from a Cincinnati program that made the NCAA tournament multiple times, and he was a fairly big contributor on that team. And it sounds like he's just ready to get to work in the ACC this year. He said that there is a little bit more athleticism and guys that are going to try to finish over him at the rim, but he's prepared to meet anyone who comes at him at the rim. And I think for Nassir, he's just going to be able to bring that extra level of grit and hard work that we're going to need defensively, because a lot of teams last year just were able to score overpoweringly at times, and for us to have Nassir Brooks is huge.
Yeah, definitely, and I think he can really help on the defensive rebounding side as well. As for the other two key new additions, we also got two new incoming freshmen, Matt Cross and Earl Timberlake. Matt Cross, kind of like the traditional shooter. I think he's actually, I said this before somewhere else, I think he's a better shooter off the dribble than he is off the catch. And I know Coach L had mentioned the possibility of him starting at the 4. What do you think he can contribute to this team this year?
Yeah, well, I think Matt Cross is going to bring that hard-nosed style of play that you are going to need in the front court as well, or excuse me, in the back court as well as the front court. Him being able to shoot the ball very well off the dribble is going to be a bit of an upgrade, I think, from a player like DJ Vasiljevic, who was good off the dribble, but far better of a catch and shoot guy on the perimeter. So I think for Matt Cross to be able to fill in with the shooting that we'll need in the ACC this year is going to be crucial for us to really move from the middle of the pack in terms of team scoring to the upper echelon of that department, given that we have a lot more depth, and therefore we should have a chance at scoring more often and just taking the load off of guys like Likes and McGusty, who were relied upon a bit too heavily last year. Both of them were averaging over 15 points per game going into the ACC gauntlet. And just having a guy like Matt Cross that's going to be able to shoot the ball well off the dribble in addition to off the catch will be great. And hopefully that can rub off on other players as well. I know Earl Timberlake isn't too much of a perimeter shooter, but hopefully he can develop that as the season goes on.
Yeah, so talking about Earl Timberlake, I saw a video, like a highlight video, and it was like entitled like Earl Timberlake is the Swiss Army knife on the court or something like that. And I think that's really true, because I feel like there's no real holes in his game. You talked about maybe the outside shooting, but I feel like he does everything pretty well. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I feel amazing. I think Earl Timberlake is someone that we could have easily have seen go to an ACC rival such as a Florida State, or maybe even a Louisville or North Carolina for that matter. I believe he had an offer from Roy Williams and the Tar Heels. So just to have him on our side is amazing, because that could create a gravitational effect for other great recruits to come in the future. I mean, we've seen it with Nycene Poplar and Ja'Kai Robinson for next year's recruiting class. So I think having Earl Timberlake to be the slasher that he is, and just the amazing athlete that he can be, especially in the transition side of the game, is going to be a major factor for us. And I'm not comparing him to Alani Walker, but I would compare him more to a Bruce Brown, as Coach Larrañaga had also alluded to on Media Day, in the sense that he's going to be able to slash and really take the ball to the rim. And for us, again, last year, that was something we kind of struggled with, in the sense that we were more reliant on the outside shot with Likes and McGusty, Likes and Vasiljevic. So hopefully Earl Timberlake can be able to add just a real flair to both the half court and transition side of the game.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm really excited to see what he can bring. Who I'm really excited to see, though, this year in his sophomore year is Isaiah Wong. I saw the news story that he gained 20 pounds of muscle, and I feel like that's not going to do that's going to do a lot for his game. You know, he's someone who gets to the basket and is able to finish inside. And, you know, I think Coach L had said he's growing confidence with his 3-point shot, and you definitely saw it at the end of last year. How much do you think Isaiah Wong is going to be able to contribute this year?
Well, he's going to be able to contribute more than you expect. I think Isaiah has that mentality that is quiet, but at the same time he has that killer mentality when it comes to scoring the ball late in games. We saw it against the Virginia Tech Hokies at Castle Coliseum last year in mid-February. He was just electric at taking the ball to the basket, drawing fouls, and just doing that on an opposing team's court is not something every freshman can do. And having that be able to translate to other performances like against a North Carolina, for instance, is huge. And if you're not going to be able to rely on Chris Lykes and Cameron McGusty and having someone isn't exactly a freshman, but isn't the oldest player on the team or isn't the team's go-to leader like Lykes is going to be amazing just from a balance standpoint. Because if you're putting so much pressure on an Earl Timberlake or even a Matt Cross right away, then I think you might be a bit not disappointed, but you might have thought that you had overestimated their abilities in translating from the high school game to the college game right away. And I think that's what we sort of saw with Lonnie Walker a couple of years ago. It's not that he didn't excel. It's just that when Bruce Brown went down, we had to turn to Lykes and Walker. So I think looking at Wong, given that he's improved physically as well as mentally, and he's not overthinking as much out there on the court, is going to be huge in terms of scoring this year.
Yeah. This might be a little bit of a hot take. I think Wong can really compete with Chris Lykes as being the leading scorer on the team.
Yeah, I think so as well. The interesting thing about Lykes is that a lot of teams will put a pesky defender, like let's say a Jordan Goldwire or Trey Jones on him, and that will definitely impede on his scoring abilities. Not to say he can't get by them or even shoot over them, but it definitely reduces that possibility. So I think having a guy like Isaiah Wong to really just work alongside Lykes in those scoring needs will be very important for the Canes this year, especially when it comes to ACC tournament time, when you're playing games on end day after day. And hopefully I would hope to see that in March Madness as well. You're going to be reliant on guys other than Lykes who need to be bigger, stronger, and have the ability to take it to the rim and get fouls drawn without shots blocked.
Yeah. So we kind of talked about the injuries that hindered Miami last year. One of them being to Deng Gok. You know, he's kind of been injured the past 2 years. And then also Anthony Walker has an injury right now. I believe, is it a knee injury?
Yeah, it's a knee injury. It was released about a week ago that he would be out for 2 more weeks. So he should be back within the next week or so, assuming that all's going well and that he's been practicing again. But it does sound like he's practicing very well, and he's just kind of getting away from being that raw player on the court. And it seems like he can contribute off the bench, if not start.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, if he's healthy, Deng Gok has a chance to start for this team?
I do. I think it's going to be important to have plenty of veteran leadership out there, especially with the possibility of Earl Timberlake starting at some point. I know Coach Larrañaga wasn't really concerned about working him into the rotation, which I guess is a bit of an indicator that he wants him starting perhaps at the forward. But I do think that Deng Gak is going to finally have a chance to prove himself this season, as many Canes fans have anxiously awaited, because Gak is very athletic from the glimpses of gameplay we've seen over the past couple of years. You know, he played well in the Charleston Classic against Missouri State and Florida, from what I remember. And assuming that he can rack up some block shots and, again, just contribute to the rebounding, given that we've been in the cellar of rebounding for the past couple of seasons, then I don't see why he wouldn't be able to consistently start.
Yeah, you know, talking about him too, I recently watched like a highlight video of him, and I forgot, man. He could put the ball on the floor too. He's not just like a traditional like, catch it in the post or just dive to the post and score. He can handle the ball a little bit, you know.
Yeah, and I think if he eventually adds a jump shot, because he will be here a few more years, given that
Hmm.
he's missed more than 30%, or sorry, he's played in less than 30% of the games each of the past 2 years. He is going to be a very under the radar threat in the ACC. If he does put on more weight, then it will become more apparent on other teams' scouting reports. I think that, this guy is really a multi-tool guy in the sense that he has the physicality, shot blocking, rebounding, and a jump shot to go with it. And like you said, he can run the floor. And if you can do that nowadays, in addition to putting the ball on the ground, then it's going to be hard for teams to stop a team like the Canes, where they have Gak and Timberlake and Walker in the front court.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's talk about a little about the two guys. We kind of referenced them already, Chris Lykes and Cam McGusty, starting with Cam McGusty. Cam McGusty, man, I feel like, he's not the most athletic guy, but he knows how to get to the rim and he can kind of score whenever he wants. Um, but I feel like he kind of, where he did struggle is with turnovers and with like overall handling the ball. Where do you think he can improve this year?
Well, I think with McGusty, he's definitely going to have to show that he can play on both sides of the court.
Hmm.
Defense was, like I said, defense was a team struggle last year. But if you're going to be a veteran leader for a team like Miami, who has historically had a good program under Coach L, it's going to have to start on defense, especially for a guy like McGusty, who supposedly lost, I think, about 10 pounds or so in body fat, and has just decreased his overall body fat percentage. He's cut out a lot of sugar and other non-necessities in his diet. So I think for him, lockdown defensively and him being in just better shape from a conditioning standpoint is going to be amazing to have in the backcourt as well. He did say that the Canes are focused on picking up full court this year, which is going to be really interesting to see how that works with other teams. And historically, over the past few years at least, Miami hasn't really been known for that. So having McGusty help spearhead that will be great.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why they haven't really been known for that is just because of the lack of depth. When you only play 7-8 deep, you can't really, press the entire game or do that. I mean, I think that's why they played a lot of zone, right? Last
Yeah,
year especially.
yeah, that was definitely the case. And there were times last year where the zone defense would get exploited. I remember there were a couple of instances on the road against Clemson on New Year's Eve where other teams had their bigs just back cut behind the last line of defense in the zone, and it would be easy pickings for those big men who could really just dive to the rim or even just get a short corner jump shot. So for the Canes, it's really going to be about sticking with man more often, picking up full court, and just forcing more turnovers, because if the Canes are able to force more turnovers, like we said, they have the athleticism to get out in transition and put points on the board, I think, in a quicker fashion. There were some games last year against Boston College and Wake Forest, I believe, that the Canes were able to really force those turnovers, and we need to see more of that this season if they're going to go further in the ACC tournament.
Hmm. Let's talk about the Chris Lykes show. I feel like when you tune into a Miami game, obviously last year it was kind of hard to watch, but the
Right.
games where Chris Lykes played, you wanted to turn it on because you don't know what he's going to do, He's just that highly skilled. I mean, when someone's 5'7" on the basketball court, they obviously have to be very skilled. And I feel like he's a pest on defense, Usually someone that short isn't able to, be that capable of a defender. What do you think we can expect from him this year?
Well, I think besides the additional leadership, we can expect to not see him be overloaded with scoring. I mean, like you said, Matt, it was really difficult to see him have to go to work, especially late in games that were sort of neck and neck for the Canes, and just try and almost do too much. I think he has a lot of great dribble packages and scoring abilities. He's the one of the ACC preseason players of the year, and that's great news for the Canes. But I think you can see him maybe be a little bit more of a leader in the sense that he can defer to other teammates in sharing that scoring load. Also, I think for Chris, it's just continuing to get better on defense. I think last year there were some great instances of him drawing charges and just getting his body in front of defenders, which he's really well known for, almost like a Muggsy Bogues with his character and overall heart on the floor. So that I think when he charged against Illinois last year, that was really the play of the game for Miami. It wasn't any of the flashy scoring plays, whether it was jump shots or drives to the bucket that that did it all for the Canes. It was like the fact that he was able to take that charge in the end. And I think if we see more of that this year, then you could potentially see Chris Lykes in the talks for ACC Player of the Year as he tries to will his team once again to success in the postseason, whether it be the ACC tournament or March Madness itself.
Most definitely. So we kind of worked through the entire roster already. Going into the season, who do you think will be the starting five for the Miami Hurricanes?
Well, it'll definitely be Chris Lykes, Cameron McGusty in the backcourt. I could see Isaiah Wong potentially moving into McGusty's spot if McGusty isn't performing as expected. But given that, like I said, Cam having improved his conditioning and his defense, I think he could be a vital leader on this team in the backcourt. At small forward, I think we could see Earl Timberlake starting. And if not Timberlake right away, then it could be Isaiah Wong. Power forward, I think Dane Gak is who you go with, given that he's been around the team a bit longer than Anthony Walker and Matt Cross. And then at center, you definitely got to go with Nysier Brooks, given that he can block shots and just rebound the ball quite tenaciously. And Rodney Miller would probably be like your seventh guy off the bench, given that he's another veteran leader and he's very experienced with the team after redshirting a couple of seasons ago. But I think Lykes, McGusty, Timberlake, Gak, and then Brooks is who you're going with for now. And that's a very physical and experienced lineup.
Yeah, I apologize. I completely forgot about Rodney Miller.
No, I thought of him too, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, I think Rodney Miller, just getting into it a little bit, I think he's someone who he greatly improved last year, but I think he kind of reached his ceiling.
Yes.
In terms of I don't really see him taking a step up offensively or anything, just because the fact too I don't think he's the best interior defender. I think Nysier Brooks, should be on the court because of that. So I kind of see him as more like a big coming off the bench who's going to be a pretty good big to come off the bench.
Yeah, I think for Rodney Miller, losing 40 pounds was vital for him and his game a couple of years ago, and he did come into Miami with a real variety of moves, being the more traditional back to the basket sort of guy in the post. But I think for him, it's probably more about him being a voice in the locker room this year as he tries to inspire the younger guys and just teach those players in how it works with Coach L's program. This isn't a newer coach program, given that Coach L has retained his assistants and a lot of his players over many, many years. And I think for Rodney Miller, he doesn't have much of a shot at playing professionally, at least in the G League or in the NBA, let alone that. But if it's somewhere overseas, I don't see that being out of the picture. But I think right now it's probably just about him providing the depth Miami needs and giving that inspiration and development towards players like Timberlake and Cross and even Anthony Walker, really.
Absolutely. So getting into ACC play and the conference as a whole, I think that everyone would agree that the top four teams are probably going to be Florida State, Duke, UNC, and Virginia. Do you agree with that for the most part?
I do, yeah.
Do you think that the fifth spot is up for grabs in any team? Do you see any team coming in there? Or do you see a team like Louisville? Do you think Miami has a chance to slip into that spot?
Yeah, I do, because depth is what we sorely missed last year. If I didn't emphasize that enough, I'm going to emphasize it now, because games like the Florida State game, in both meetings actually, were very closely contested. More so in the first game, because the second game we were just without Likes and McGusty, and depth is just what is going to take this team further this year. I'm not exactly sure of how much further that will be. I can't pinpoint whether that'll mean another Sweet 16 berth for Coach L in his 10th season, or the ACC title game, or let alone the semifinal. But it will get us further. You see teams like Florida State and Louisville, who are always anchored by so many players. It just really was something that ripped your heart out when you would see all these substitutions in the game last year, and for us it was less frequent. So for us, I think we definitely have a shot at getting towards that fifth team in the ACC rankings. I don't think Virginia is going to be as good this year. I just think that despite them being a well-coached team, we are more of an under-the-radar team that not a lot of people are going to be expecting to come out with a flash of, infused talent and depth as we've regurgitated. So Miami will be there, and if it's not fifth, it's probably going to be a sixth or even seventh. But no reason we can't slide up into the top 25 rankings and earn an at-large berth for the tournament in March.
Exactly. I can't remember where I saw it. It was somewhere on Twitter. A picture of I think it was Joe Lunardi's prediction. I don't know if you saw it, of where Miami would be in the tournament, and he had them as a 9 seed.
Right.
LSU, was it an 8 or no? Yeah, 9 seed against LSU. Is that kind of the range you expect? Obviously, with COVID and everything, we don't know how the tournament is going to be set up this year or whatever. Is that kind of the range you see them?
Yeah, I think it is, in the sense that we likely won't be winning the ACC tournament. There are just programs out there like a Duke or North Carolina, even Florida State, as you mentioned, that are also very well equipped to succeed in March, let alone April. So for us, I think it's just all about winning as many games as possible in the ACC, and just hoping that this pandemic doesn't amplify anymore, because the last thing we need is another season getting shut down right when the ACC tournament strikes. And for Miami, anything's possible when you get to that NCAA tournament. As we saw against Loyola in 2018, we thought we had them on the ropes. It was a very tight ball game, and unfortunately, Loyola just had a little bit more luck in their favor that day. And ever since that day, I think this program's just been trying to revive itself and do whatever's possible to get recruits. And, recruiting hasn't been our strong suit up until this time last year, when we got commitments from Cross and Timberlake. So it's just all about being healthy, having the ability to control what we can control, and winning games, and just having that never say die attitude when it comes to postseason play, especially against a team like LSU that is always getting new players similar to us, and hasn't been that prominent in terms of the NCAA tournament over the past few years.
Yeah. So kind of looking at this schedule, I know we kind of summarize how our thoughts on how Miami will perform in reference to the ACC schedule. This season's obviously a lot different because of COVID. There's not as many non-conference games. I believe there's only 4 or 5, if I count
5,
correct.
yeah.
5? Okay. Oh yeah, that's right, because the Stetson one just got rescheduled, right?
Yes, that got rescheduled to December 4th.
Yeah, okay. Do you think that could kind of trouble this team? They have some young players. Do you think that could give them some trouble, just because, you're kind of going right into ACC play, against one of the best conferences, probably the best conference in my opinion for basketball. How do you think that affects the team?
Well, I actually think it serves beneficiary to the team in the sense that it'll give us a wake-up call earlier than last year. I thought last year we were very confident in our abilities early on in the season before we lost Dane Gack and then we lost Keith Stone for a fairly significant period of time. I know he came back in the Illinois game and did well, but we went on that 5-game win streak? We were 9-3 at one point going into that Duke game, and we won against Clemson in overtime. And that was a great morale booster, but for us to get sort of punched in the gut right at the start of the new year against a team like Duke and then fall behind by so much to Louisville and only lose by 15 was sort of detrimental to us. I think it disrupted a lot of the momentum we had early on, and we really were inconsistent from that point on. We had a lot of great wins, like I said, against Virginia Tech in 3 overtimes, but there were games where we lost to teams like Florida State. We lost to Pittsburgh and a handful of other games that we could have taken. Even Virginia was a close game at home, as a 1-possession loss. So I think for Miami, if they can benefit from playing teams in the ACC earlier this season, like closer to the middle of December as we do with Pittsburgh and Virginia Tech, then that should probably prepare us a little better for the season. And again, staying healthy is what it's really all about for us.
So last thing before we let you go, do you have a record projection for this season? Or if not, it's totally okay.
Well, I think having gone, last year we, I believe we were 7-13 in the conference, 15-16 overall. Assuming we do end up playing all of our games this year without interruptions due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I say in the conference we flip that and go 13-7. I know that is a fairly significant shift to go in one season, but realistically, I think that's the shot we have, especially given that we're playing really the same amount of ACC games and less non-conference games. And then overall, I mean, we're only playing 4 non-conference games plus 20 ACC games. Well, I guess it's 5 non-conference games with Stetson still on the board. So overall, I say we go. I say we go 18-7. I think we can win all of our non-conference games against these more mid-major type of schools or programs. And I think, as long as we stay healthy, we see the expected performance out of guys like McGusty, Likes on defense especially. Wong, hopefully he can maintain what he did in the second half of his freshman campaign. That should be extraordinary to go from and playing with 8 guys 2 seasons in a row and finishing below 500 to seeing us finish towards the upper echelon of the ACC.
Yeah, I think that would be a major improvement. Man, we're gonna have to have you back on for some recruiting sometime if you're.
Yeah, I'd love to be back.
If you're down. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Wyatt.
You're quite welcome. Glad you had me. I really appreciate being on here.
No problem. Thank you. That's Wyatt Kopelman.
Thank you. Have a good one. Go Canes.